As we continue our rolling coverage here from the Rock in Pretoria as those results kept trickling in. The floor quite busy now. We've seen quite a number of representatives from political parties who've made their way here to Pretoria. Of course, the results are coming in. Some of the political parties, some would argue whether we will even see some of these political parties by the results that we've seen so far as early as Monday. But of course, as we continue our broadcast here, we'll be crossing to Diabosito. She'll be speaking to an analyst a bit later on. And of course, the markets, the ratings agencies as well are also looking at how this election in South Africa will fare. And basically, whoever, ascends to become winner in this election, what policies, of course, will there be for the economy of this particular country? We know that jobs has been one of the key issues in South Africa that has been plaguing the progress of this particular country, and unemployment, exactly what then needs to be done post this election. Those are conversations, of course, that will take effect once that official winner is announced. But let's go now to, of course, Vanessa Poonah, who is in the Western Cape, in Cape Town. Let's find out from her what the latest there is. Vanessa, very good afternoon to you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Crisalda, and good afternoon to you. Yes, here in the Western Cape, actually at the moment at the IEC's Provincial Operations Centre, we see that about 65% or so of voting districts have now been declared, and in this province, the trend suggests that the Democratic Alliance will be the majority winner. Of course, there are still quite a number of voting districts to be completed. Most of them would be in the traditional rural areas, and also the areas that would be dominated historically by support for the ANC. But of course, joining me is Professor Erwin Schweller. Professor, good afternoon to you again. So we see that it looks unlikely at this stage that the Western Cape at least will see any sort of coalition, of course, at this stage, judging by the support and also by the showing at the polls for the Democratic Alliance.
Yes, that's good. For them, they have made actually good. Well, now they're doing well, and they are also pleased about it. I have spoken to a number of the political party leaders also on the floor here, and it seems as if it is a given thing that the DA will win this election without the necessity to form a coalition. It also means that the ANC and an EFF coalition is not imminent, and therefore we can also perhaps just refer to the smaller parties. The smaller parties that do come in is the EFF at about 3%. Good is not doing that well. They're at about 3% as well, and then also the Freedom Front. I think there's an interesting correlation here, whereby if you are a very small party without a national profile, then probably you have very little chance of moving into, let's say, figures above 1 up to 4. So at this interesting observation.
So at this stage, it would appear that the older, the more established political parties are the ones garnering the majority of the votes. For example, we know that the ANC still has quite a number of support in the voting districts that haven't yet been declared. You said earlier on that this is interesting. I mean, politics in the Western Cape has always been somewhat different to the rest of the country.
One can look at that and say that's true, and that might be declared or explained by the fact that the province is in some ways fairly mature as a democracy. Secondly, that there are a different population configuration in the Western Cape, and those two things, the fact that here people move their votes in terms of their interests, that can explain that, as well as the demography. Therefore, the ANC, I think, is under-realizing its potential, because it's often seen to be speaking about non-racialism, but not perceived by the majority voters in the Western Cape to actually do that. And therefore, that perception, in some ways, always has created problems for the ANC.
You've spoken to the ANC's Ibrahim Rasool a short while ago. Just very briefly, if you can tell us what his sense and feeling is at this point in time.
Yeah, Mr. Rasool says that they will build from this base. I think he says that in actual fact they would like the province to give more support, well, it's passed now, to the president, and in that sense they are still looking at a higher percentage in what is going to come from the province, as well as in terms of the national. But I think there's an acceptance that they will not win this one, and that they will have to go back to their planning situation and actually start thinking again about how do they approach this province in the next term.
Thank you very much, Professor Erwin Schweller, of course, our political analyst. And Griselda, it's back to you now.